Hello, welcome to Thor Talk, the show all about Marvel's resident God of Thunder. No matter how dire the situation looks, or how powerful the villain seems, a fight is never truly over until the hero finally turns to his last resort, his hidden strength, his ace in the hole, his strongest attack. For Thor, that is the Godblast. But just how strong is Thor's strongest attack? What is the peak of power for a being that embodies power itself? Just what is the Godblast? We're going to answer these questions as we try to understand the power of the Godblast on Thor Talk.
I am Thor the Thunderer, son of Odin, prince of Asgard, and this world is under my protection.
In Thor number 161, Thor finds himself allied with Ego the Living Planet in a war with the world devourer, Galactus. When Galactus begins to prevail, Thor faces the world devourer head-on, but the God of Thunder is eventually thrown onto Ego's surface. Despite the impossible odds, Thor refuses to flee, and commands a group of alien refugees to erect a stand from their ship. Thor tells the refugees to seek shelter, as he steadies Mjolnir with the stand, and begins to channel energy into the hammer. Thor merges his own godly strength with the hammer supreme, and fires it at Galactus with a bludgeoning blast. Galactus is helpless as he is hurled back by the blast. He seeks shelter in his ship, but is still being bludgeoned to death by this energy. Galactus realizes that if he doesn't leave immediately, then he will surely die, so he flees before it can kill him. And victory is Thor's. The attack that Thor used would have a few other appearances over the years, with Thor combining his own life force with the Hammer Supreme in extremely desperate situations. It had no official name, but over time, fans began to call it the Godblast. It wasn't until Astonishing Thor number 1 in 2011 that the term would appear in canon and become the official name for Thor's most powerful attack. The Godblast is when Thor's godly life force becomes one with Mjolnir, which is then fired in a single devastating blast. This makes it the perfect ultimate attack for Thor. There's often a lot of discussion both in and out of comics about Thor and his hammer. Does Thor rely on Mjolnir's power in order to be a heavy hitter, or does he not need it to be one of the strongest? Even as far back as his earliest appearances, Thor's enemies have been trying to defeat him by taking away his hammer, and Thor has been trying to prove that he's still a god even without it. The Godblast is the perfect ultimate attack for Thor because he's not relying on the power of his hammer or trying to prove his worth without it, but instead, he uses it as an extension of his own power, as the two become one. Given that this attack involves Thor using his own life force, there is a common misconception that the Godblast puts Thor's life at risk. But this is not the case, and actually, it is impossible for the Godblast to kill Thor. That's because while the Godblast doesn't put Thor's life at risk, it does put Mjolnir at risk. If Thor puts too much of his godly life force into the hammer, then Mjolnir will be destroyed, as seen in Thor number 388. This shows that Mjolnir would be destroyed before Thor's life is ever in danger. Thor has taken steps in the past to reduce the strain on Mjolnir, such as steadying it with a stand and wrapping it in his belt of strength, Mjolnir. Thor does not always take these steps, but Mjolnir is usually still able to handle the strain, and using the Godblast has only destroyed Mjolnir on one occasion. This means that Thor can control the amount of his life force that he puts into Mjolnir, which is why Mjolnir isn't destroyed every time he uses it, and why certain Godblasts do less damage. Thor also seems to be able to use the Godblast multiple times in a relatively short amount of time, since he was confident he could use it on Alter Ego and then again on Ego after that. While the Godblast is primarily known for its overwhelming bludgeoning power, it also seems to have strong dimensional manipulation. Thor has used it to close dimensional breaches, transport Surtur and Ymir to a dimension of suspended animation, and was even the main contributor in a combined Godblast that held back the collapse of the multiverse. So now that we've established what the Godblast is, just how powerful is it? The Godblast has had numerous impressive feats over the years. As we've already touched on, in its very first appearance in Thor number 161, the Godblast defeated Galactus and forced him to flee for his life. Now, to be clear, Galactus was hungry at the time, so he was by no means at full power. But this is still incredibly impressive for Thor and the Godblast. Thor specifically used the Godblast because Galactus was on the verge of defeating Ego. Ego has been an impressive rival for Galactus in the past, and even defeated Galactus in their next battle. So even if Galactus wasn't at his greatest level of power, he was still strong enough to defeat someone as strong as Ego. In Thor Volume 2, Issue 12, Thor attempts to free Asgard from the tyranny of the Dark Gods. When Asgard begins to succeed, Magistron Zela calls for the Union. This causes the Dark Gods to merge together, with their power being distilled into one being. The Dark Gods are a pantheon that acts as a villainous reflection of the Asgardians, and Magistron Zela is essentially their version of Odin. The Dark Gods are incredibly powerful, as they conquered Asgard and even laid waste to Olympus. The Union causes the Dark Gods to merge, and their power is now distilled into one being. The Union is able to lay waste to the Asgardians, and even do serious damage to the Destroyer. Not only does Magistron Zela fulfill a similar role to Odin, but she seems to be about equal to Odin in power, as she had Odin on the verge of defeat in their first battle, and was able to utterly defeat him in their second battle. After defeating him, she then absorbed all of Odin's power to the point that Odin was so weak that he was imprisoned by chains that were easily broken by a robot that Thor easily defeated. This means that she possessed the Odin Force, and since she had both Odin's powers and her own, she was about twice as powerful as Odin normally is. And Odin is normally pretty powerful. One of Odin's battles tore apart the fabric of the multiverse, shattered entire galaxies, and reignited stars. Thor uses the Godblast against Magistron Zela and the Union of the Dark Gods. This destroys the Union and cripples Magistron Zela to the point that the severely weakened Odin was able to overpower her. Thor was able to use the Godblast to destroy a pantheon of gods and cripple a being twice as powerful as Odin. Thor number 388 saw Thor pushing his limits when he used the Godblast on Exitar, the Exterminator. After breaking through Exitar's armor, Thor finds himself faced with a dome that houses Exitar's brain. Thor wraps Mjolnir with his belt of strength to reinforce it, and puts everything he has into one Godblast. The Godblast destroys the dome and jostles Exitar, but channeling all that power ends up destroying Mjolnir. Exitar is one of the most powerful Celestials in existence, and the Celestials are among the most powerful beings in existence. The combined might of Odin, Zeus, and Vishnu was unable to even affect Arishem the Celestial. Realizing that the gods were outmatched, Odin created the Destroyer armor, which the Skyfathers of Earth put their power into. When the fourth host of Celestials arrived, Odin took control of the Destroyer armor, picked up the Odin sword, and put all of the Asgardian souls into the Destroyer to face the fourth host. The fourth host easily annihilated this super Odin Destroyer. According to Thor Annual number 14, the fourth host's power is nothing when compared to Exitar. Thor's all-out Godblast is able to destroy the dome that houses Exitar's brain, and this dome is also more durable than Celestial armor. More durable than the Celestials that Odin Destroyer and the Skyfathers fought. Also, Thor specifically says that he was using the Belt of Strength to help Mjolnir channel the power by reinforcing it. So, it did not make the Godblast more powerful, it just helped Mjolnir hold on for longer as it channeled all that energy. The most recent Godblast is a bit iffy, but I think still worth a mention. In Thor Volume 6, Issue 5, Thor uses the Godblast to escape the Black Winter, and even makes it bleed. The Black Winter is a universe-devouring entity that made Galactus its herald. Galactus had just consumed 5 special planets that supposedly made him more powerful than ever, but he couldn't escape from the Black Winter's grasp until the Godblast freed him. Now, while this is an incredibly impressive Godblast, it should be noted that Thor had a portion of the Odin Force and a portion of the Power Cosmic at the time, so it's likely that the Godblast was amplified due to Thor's extra power. Still, even with that, the Godblast is an incredibly powerful attack. It can kill a hungry Galactus, tear apart the fabric of reality to prevent the collapse of the multiverse, cripple a being twice as powerful as Odin, and shatter the most durable part of one of the most powerful Celestials. It is truly an ultimate attack worthy of Thor. Well, that's all for this episode of Thor Talk. I hope you enjoyed this discussion on the Godblast and its power. If you liked the video, please think about leaving a like and or comment. It really helps out the channel. Or maybe even subscribing. We mostly talk about Thor stuff here. No, that's not true. We only talk about Thor stuff here. So if that's your thing, maybe stick around for more. Well, with that being said, see you next time on Thor Talk, where...
You'll behold in breathless wonder